Okay, so on the last episode, you saw us install the trans and the engine in the car, which was a huge pain in the dick. But even though it looks like we're almost done, there's still a whole ton of work that still needs to be done. I still gotta take the manifold off, replace the injectors with my 1050Xs. So maybe listing these up for sale. So. Which is going to be funny because I'm probably going to list them up for sale before this video comes out. So, yeah. But, regardless, probably going to sell them or keep them for a future project. I got to put the knock sensor harness on, which I have over here. Simple little harness. Got to put the knock sensor harness on, put the main engine harness on, and then so I could run it, so I could actually figure out where my ECU is going to go. And wire in the main harness back in, hook up the alternator, the starter, probably fix the cable for my alternator that goes to my starter because it's broken. One of the ends came off. I gotta connect the clutch cable. I just gotta do a lot of work. It's, even though it looks like the majority of the work has been done, it's like the last, when you're like 90% done, the last 10% takes like 90% of the time. It's just doing like little tiny little minute details. And then I gotta go through the entire car and nut and bolt and check everything because I know a lot of these high pressure lines are loose. I did not put a wrench on them. I just twisted them on by hand. One's not even on, so I don't even know where the fuck that one went. But yeah, so, and also gotta hook up the suspension again and put the brakes back on. Hopefully my new rotors show up. I had to order some brand new rotors because my old ones, there's a noticeable lip where I used to run just the regular Cobra brakes, and then when I switched over to the Brembos, oh, right here, you can probably see it right there. There you see that little dark spot where my finger is? Well, that's actually a ridge from where the Cobra brake pad used to go, and then the Brembo, how much more it added. So it added a good like 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch of just meat on the pad and how much I was actually using the rotor. So I just opted to just get brand new rotors, probably sell those too or use them for my buddy's car. And yeah, so it's awesome seeing how the new cold air fits 100 times better than the old cold air. So I'm gonna go ahead and just start wiring everything up, getting everything buttoned up, and hopefully starting soon. We'll see. So enough rambling. I know I do that a lot. So I'm just gonna get to it. But then I kind of started playing around with it, and it seems like my stock one is actually going to work just fine. And since I was planning on switching it over to this side, it looks like it'll be the same. And what's cool about this one is that it's hardline all the way through. Meanwhile, the GT350 is soft line here. This is all soft line. Well, it's like hard plastic, which is weird. And then it also has this fuel pressure sensor there, which I mean I could always just leave it there and then later on switch over to, you know, be able to run a standalone sensor there so I could monitor fuel pressure. So maybe if I got like an AM like dash, but I think I'm actually gonna run the stock one instead. It just looks a little bit cleaner with the metal lines, how they're bent, and honestly I think it's just gonna work a lot better. So, but overall the injectors look good. You can definitely tell it ran on 91, which just by the smell of it. It smells gross. And then of course my injectors, which pretty much only saw E85 that smell like gross E85 that's been sitting for months. So I'm gonna go ahead, wash this intake, just clean it up because it's really gross, and clean these also. Just give them a wipe down, maybe spray them with some brake cleaner, just because the 85 can be corrosive, just because it's a lot of ethanol in there. Well, it's primarily ethanol, so it's 85% ethanol. And yeah, so I'm gonna get this taken care of and knock out the rest. Just bolt it on and go ahead and plug it in. I did delete the IMRCs already. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm just gonna do the low bug zip tie trick, where you just put a zip tie and zip tie them open. I've seen a lot of people run it that way with zero issues. It's a lot cheaper than paying $50 for a tiny little piece of plastic that's 3D printed. For those who don't know what IMRCs are, you can't really see them in there, but they're just little flaps. They're like little throttle body flaps in there, and it won't work with my Gen 1 ECU. It's more of a Gen 2, Gen 3 thing. And essentially what it does is it helps with low end torque. So I can't use it, so I deleted them. It's all this stuff right here. And then also on a Fox body, you can't run this stuff because it just won't fit. There's just no room. You probably saw me just struggling putting the harness on, and in hindsight, it would have been probably better to install the harness before the motor went in, but I just didn't want to get the harness caught on anything, because back here it is super tight. I can't even fit my hand through there with the harness in the way. That's how little space there is. So plan ahead. If you got small hands and you can reach back there, then cool. If you got big hands, try and put the harness on before you put the motor in. So that's my tip for the day. So I'm gonna keep moving, clean these, and get it installed. Okay, so I have the injectors all cleaned up now, and I re-greased them. So you just gotta make sure you at least grease the little O-rings on them. That way, because the E85 does dry them out, and also since I was using brake cleaner on them, it dries out the rubber. A little bit of grease will keep them from wanting to crack and leak in the future, because a fuel leak in the engine bay is a bad day. So I wanted to show you just how those IMRCs look. You can see the little flap in there, and pretty much how I set it up here, I just zip tied it in the open position. So I'm just gonna do the same thing with this one. So there's their closed, and now they're open, closed. They actually close it completely, just seals the whole intake off. Interesting. But I'm gonna go ahead and zip tie them in the open position, so they will never close. And it's also a lot cheaper than paying like $40-50 for an IMRC delete kit, which is just 2 pieces of plastic. I don't understand it. But I'm gonna go ahead, finish drying it off with some compressed air, and get it installed in the car, and I'll show you how that looks. Okay, so got everything cleaned up and reinstalled. So now that the engine is mostly wired up, let's just, plug Mr. Connector in and Mrs. Connector in. There we go. Just gotta finish button up the alternator. But most of the engine is wired up. Gotta figure out this one, because it's kind of weird how the motor sits differently. So probably gonna cut that and wire it differently. I even went ahead and finished up deleting the IMRCs, and I put the injectors in, bolted it down. I just gotta bolt down the fuel rails now through the throttle body after I cleaned it also, and now I'm starting on the cooling system. So that will go somewhere over there, like so, if I can get it. So that hose needs to be trimmed. It always bugged me. And then here's my idea of how I kind of want to run the I forget what the word is, but you know what I mean. Pressure regulator, the fuel pressure regulator. I don't don't know. I kind of don't mind the fuel lines running this way. The only thing is that, like, I wish I could flip the manifold, the rail, just because of the IMRCs. I am unable to do that, so it has to go on that side. Before, I was able to flip it. Now I'm not able to do that, just because it does have that junk in the back. So I think it'll look fine. I don't think it'll look too out of place. And then this line, it'll be running behind the motor. I don't know how much I like that, but it's a very overkill line for that too, or hose. So I'm gonna go ahead, finish buttoning up. It's just a lot of like tiny little tinkering stuff. So maybe start even installing parts for the cooling system back on there, and get this motor that much closer to starting. It'd be dope if I could even hook up power to it today, and that way I can test the E85 that's been sitting in the tank, see if it's still good or if it's bad. It's just a tiny little tester that's like $10 on Amazon. I'd like to test the E85. If not, I'm gonna have to drain as much as I can out of it into a bucket and put in some fresh E85. So alright, so I'm gonna keep going and knock this stuff out. Okay, so what you pretty much just saw me do is damn near plumb the entire cooling system, man. I'm just missing a hose clamp for this one, and it'll be, you know, ready to go. And then I just gotta put the other heater hose and run it to the back. Easy day, just basic shit. But one thing I did mess up when I was trying to install the cold air. It didn't come with any clamps, so I had to use my old ones. But what I ended up doing was I ended up stripping the little threads out of the holes, which sucks, but nothing a little bit of epoxy can't fix. So I'm gonna go ahead and fix that. I think what I gotta do is I gotta cut down the screws, because I think they're too long, because it felt like it got tight, but the map sensor wasn't tight all the way. It was still loose. So when I went to snug it down, I felt it go from tight to loose all of a sudden, and I pretty much knew I was screwed. So, and it happened to me twice. So I'm gonna go ahead, fix these. A little bit of 5-minute epoxy can take care of that. So fix it and just trim the screws down. Can't do anything, so not that big of a deal.
I came from the mud, there's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree, there's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the my chin.